What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the episode of the Travis Makes Friends podcast. Today, I'm making friends with the one, the only Josh Goodman. Josh is in studio with me. What's up, man? How's everything going?
What's up, Travis?
How are you enjoying Vegas?
It's hot.
It is very hot. You know,
It's
this
lit.
has actually been a very hot summer, like more so than usual, unfortunately. We had like 47 days in a row of a 105 or over, which I guess was some sort of a record. So
Yeah, well,
yeah.
It's Vegas.
Good times. You know, what are you going to do? I guess what we're going to do is we're going to go golfing it.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I was trying to think of that run where people like, what's the bad something?
Bad water.
We're gonna do a bad water golf.
Yeah.
That's what
It's a lot of fun. Basically, you just got to bring as many beers as you drink. You have to also drink that much water.
Yeah.
So there's just lots of peeing. That's what happens when you play Vegas in like this time of year. But it'll be good. It'll be good. We picked a good course. I should say you picked a good course. So, well, hey dude, welcome to the show. So I want to jump in, but before we do, I want to plug the book. So this is Tap the Big Idea, written by Josh, and it's the story of how he built this really cool new company that we're going to be talking about the rest of the time that we had together. So if you are interested in hearing entrepreneurial success stories and want to hear how Josh disrupted one of the biggest industries and oldest ones in the world, then you're going to want to pick up a copy of Tap the Big Idea. And like I always say on the show, make sure you just buy the book. You know, if you're going to have an unlimited budget for anything, it should be books, because people like Josh spend their time learning a bunch of things, failing and then succeeding and then failing and probably more failing and then succeeding and then failing. And they do all of that over and over again. And they write about it in books like this. And you can learn that for what, $20-$30. So go pick up a copy of Tap the Big Idea before we jump in. Now, Josh, I have to admit, sitting down with you is kind of funny because you look back and see different like kind of stepping stones along the way. So here's the story from my perspective. There's a new development that went in right behind our house, this big condo complex, retail, shopping, like everything that's going in right behind us. And this place opened up called Taps and Barrels. And it's so close to our house. My wife and I just kind of we like to go on walks. So every night we just started walking over to this area, and this cool restaurant, Taps and Barrels, pops up. And basically you go in and you pay with your card, and then in exchange they give you a little Taps and Barrels card, and then you go up and it's like a 32 taps on the wall, just a bunch of different types of beers. You go in, you put the little card they give you in there, you pour your own beer, you pay by the ounce, and then you leave and you pay for whatever you drank when you were there. I was like, that's a really cool concept. It's like, I'm pretty sure I saw one of those in San Diego one time, but wasn't thinking about it. Fast forward, unfortunate timing, and I'd love to talk a little bit more about him too, but our mutual friend John Ruling calls me, and we were just talking about 2 or 3 different things. We're catching up on a few things. We chatted for probably close to an hour, and I brought up this beer tap wall thing because I was like, I'm looking to build out a studio space in Vegas, and I want to put one of these beer tap. I was like, have you ever seen these things? And he was like, oh, not only have I seen them, but I actually know the founder of PourMyBeer, which is the technology that any one of these concepts is using. And he's like, I'm actually an advisor in that company. Would you want an intro to the guy? I was like, oh yeah, sure. That'd be awesome. So then me and you get in touch and have an intro call. And then we just kind of hit it off from there. And we've been trying to get together in person. You're coming out to Vegas for a couple other things. I was like, hey dude, why don't we sit down and have a chat about how PourMyBeer came into existence? So there's a couple things in that story I want to unpack. First of all, shout out to John Ruling, rest in peace. Man, crazy news. You texted me as soon as it happened, we were like, hey man, did you see what happened with John? I was like, no. When you first texted me, I was like, he got into a car accident or like something serious happened. Crazy. He was on vacation, and all we know is that he collapsed and he never got back up. So
Yeah, super sad.
Yeah, honestly, I mean, you always wonder, man, because like he was just such a good dude. Nobody I ever knew that had mutual friends said anything bad about John. He was always like very giving, very compassionate, loving person. He was probably, this is probably episode 930 something of the show. John Ruling was episode like 17, 16 or something like that. Wow. So we've known each other for a few years now. And like I said, we've hung out at different events. it was just one of those, it hits you like a, ton of bricks when you hear news like that.
His daughters, he's got 4 daughters, 4 to 13. And it's, I randomly met up with him on a fishing trip a few years ago, and just got a chance to spend time with him and his family, and just to see the level of like love he had, for his family. And now, he's gone, which is, as parents, that's just like your worst fear.
It hits you hard, man. It hits you hard. I had that cancer diagnosis a few weeks back, and I was kind of faced with a lot of those, those thoughts. But luckily we got some really great news, and, I think we're on the other side of it, at least really, really close to being on the other side of it at this point. And so all of that stuff was kind of in my mind already. And then to get hit with that news, like right in the midst of all of that, was just like, it was like, it just feels like it's been reminder after reminder after reminder recently. And maybe that's just in my own life. Maybe the life is trying to tell me to slow down a little bit and pull the enjoyment out. When you have the opportunity to, because man, he was such a good dude, young, healthy, early 40s, I think he was
44, 45.
Leaves behind an amazing family. Luckily, I say luckily, it wasn't lucky at all. It was purposeful. Purposefully, he at least has a lot of people in his life that will make sure that his family is well taken care of, which is something that, is unfortunate it even has to happen. So rest in peace, John. We love you and appreciate you and your family. So now that
he's in the book several times. He was an impact player in this story, just through introductions, through generosity, through, believing in me when I didn't believe in myself, so, man, big shout out to John. Yeah.
Well, now that we've thoroughly depressed everybody listening to this, let's go ahead and jump into the rest of the story here. So, PourMyBeer this is not a franchise. So why don't you break down exactly what it is, for people that are, for people listening who maybe they're in the industry, what's different about it? Why, like how is the model different from what everybody else is doing? And then talk us through kind of the inception of the idea.
Yeah. So, again, thanks for having me again, Travis.
Yeah, of course.
Awesome. The book was, just to kind of start the story with the book, it was a culmination of people saying, man, these stories you have are crazy. And there's some crazy ones. You got to put them in a book. So that's where that idea came from. But the idea of being able to serve yourself came from a place of pain. I was going through a stage professionally. I called it a professional purgatory. I closed a deal that I should have gotten $250,000 commission on in my 20s, and the CEO decided to just not pay me for it. And that led me on this journey of... Oh,
my gosh. First of all, what are you selling that gives you $250,000 commissions?
People.
Okay.
It was...
so you're in the slavery business.
IT staffing. So I had landed the largest energy client in the company. It's Constellation Energy Group out of Baltimore. And again, it's in the book, but the HR department specifically told me not to deal with any of the managers. Like they said, you cannot market to managers. They're off limits. We have a 4-vendor program, and we stick to those 4 vendors, and we only renew them every 2 or 3 years. So she said, wait until we renew them. Well, my CEO said, screw her. Go to the managers, take them out to dinner, take them golfing, get to know them, find out what openings you have. And I did that. And I built the org chart. It took about a year, and I finally placed someone with the company through a pass-through.
Okay.
And the HR woman found out about that and, reached out to me and said, I told you not to talk to managers. Now you're banned permanently from from ever stepping on site. And I said, it's a friend of a friend. And, again, I was just following my CEO's orders.
Yeah.
Bottom line is someone, not to bring Enron into the equation, but one of our directors knew their CTO, who was an ex-Enron employee that he hired, for them. So we actually did get to compete for the RFP, request for proposal, for anyone not familiar with that terminology. And then, our CEO actually met the woman who banned me from the property and said, is there any reason you could see us not getting this contract? And she said, yeah, Josh Goodman. And that's when he said, okay, well, he'll never touch this account. And so it was this weird celebration where they announced the entire company, a publicly traded company, we won this big account. And then
the person responsible is being fired. Yeah.
Well, is being not paid, you know?
Yeah.
So that led me to down kind of a deep, dark rabbit hole where I was like, what do I want to do with my life? Like, I didn't even really like staffing. It was just good money. And, you know, the people were pretty cool.
It was good money until they refused to pay you the money.
That was and then watching them pay it to someone else.
Oh, they paid it to somebody else.
Yeah, that was.
They just picked a random person or what?
One of the sales guys who not actually sold anything, and I feel bad for the guy, but someone had to manage the account, so he became the account manager for that account and received all the rewards for being the account manager.
Wow,
which should have been my account.
Right.
So it was actually more salt in the wound to see him being praised for his success as I'm watching this unfold.
Yeah,
so
you teed it up for him. Yeah, like close.
I was very mean to him. I made pretty, not even passive aggressive, like aggressive comments to him. Just how he won the lottery and things. But
well, it would be difficult. Yeah, I was gonna say it'd be difficult to not do it, but also it wasn't his fault.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, he was he was a young father or whatever. So I bring that part of the story up because that's what led me to this whole idea of like, I got to find a problem. I'd started reading entrepreneur books like Rich Dad, Poor Dad and, 4 Hour Work Week, things like that. Those were kind of my gateway drugs to the
of course,
self-help world. And that led me to like just looking at problems. And I won't go into all the failed businesses prior to like going after this specific problem, but I was out with a bunch of buddies. We were in Baltimore at the time and we were going to go to an Orioles game. And we got to this bar, Mother's, that, it's kind of a staple of Baltimore. And it took us 20 minutes to get a drink. Actually, I timed it because I knew we walked in at like, 5. And I was like, we were trying to wave down people. We were doing like, waving money at the bartenders, trying to get someone to give us a drink. And I was like, so we came here to meet to drink a beer or two before the game. We can't even get a beer.
Yeah, right.
And I just started thinking, well, I'm upset about this. There's got to be other people in here that are also in the same predicament as us, but also the owners are losing out on revenue that they could be generating.
Right.
So that I left the bar and I said, I've got to create a business that solves this problem. The I can't get a drink problem.
Yeah.
And so I left and I didn't end up going to the Orioles game. My buddies.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was, and I went home and wrote a business plan. And it's funny to even look at that thing now. It was not a beautiful business plan, but it was
That's hilarious. So you were like so antsy about solving that problem that you didn't even go to the game with your buddies. You just went home and figured it out.
I'd been on the lookout for like a problem. It's
like you had the entrepreneurial itch, but you were like, I don't know how to scratch this.
And the first step is, again, finding a problem you can solve. And I was ignorant enough. I was ignorant, but I was also excited. So I didn't know how big of a task it would be to like write code and build hardware and all these insane things. I was just excited that I had this idea that I could start trying to take action on. And I do encourage entrepreneurs to share. Like some people are like, ooh, I'm not going to share this secret idea, to anybody. But I shared it with like a bunch of my friends and some of them are like, oh, that'll never work. Like the pitch was, you can pump your own gas. Why can't you pump your own, beer? And pay for whatever you pump. But then, after sharing it with a bunch of people, someone like sent me a link to this place in Atlanta that was doing beer taps on the table. And I was like, well, that's not really the direction I want to go, but it's kind of like a step in the right direction.
Yeah, like other people are thinking about this problem apparently. Yeah,
exactly. And the person that did the one in Atlanta had just seen it in South America. So he just similar to a lot of ideas, you see it somewhere else in the world, you bring it where it's not currently.
Yeah.
And that's what started the whole journey. And I think of it in different phases. So that was chapter 1. I was like, oh, I'm excited about solving this problem. Chapter 2 was, not to give away the whole book, but it was getting into business with some Irish people who ended up being not the best business partners in a lot of ways.
Okay.
But we brought that self-port concept that they had been deploying in Ireland to the United States.
Okay.
So they had landed a deal with Diageo. For those of you not familiar with Diageo, it's Guinness. That's the parent company for Guinness. So they had landed a multi-million-dollar deal with Diageo to give away these self-service beer tables all throughout Ireland. Okay. Because their theory was a little bit of beer education here, but Heineken is the number 1 selling lager in all of Ireland. So
interesting.
Carlsberg is a competitive lager, but it's also in a green can. So the theory was if they could put Guinness on the table and Carlsberg on the table right in front of the guest, that they would possibly convert from Heineken to Carlsberg.
And Carlsberg is one of their beers.
And Carlsberg is the Diageo beer. So that proved out, pretty well in the first 5 or 10 locations they did. So they said, yeah, let's put it in 800 or no, 200 locations, 800 tables.
Wow.
And that's when I kind of came into the equation, because I'd done kind of an apprenticeship for a guy that does draft systems. And he was like, hey, this company was at a trade show, here's their system. Maybe you could import it, But he even told me, he was like, you're wasting your time. Self-pour is never going to take off in the United States.
Why would they say that? Do they ever give you reasons? Like, it's not going to take off because of this reason?
He said I guess it would be like someone saying, hey, taxis make more sense than expecting some random person to pick you up. Right. It's like, it doesn't make sense when you hear it that way.
Yeah.
I mean, if you talk to somebody in the 80s before phones and said, hey, there's going to be this network of people that'll just randomly pick you up and drop you off and you're going to exchange money virtually.
Yeah.
Like, that sounds insane. So I think the person that told me that, it was just somewhat old school, super well respected in the industry. But, I think as any entrepreneur, you have to have this insane belief, regardless of what anyone says.
Well, like you said, there's definitely a mixture of ignorance that goes in with it. When you talk to the people who are the experts in the industry, they can't see what they can't see. And they're by definition opposed to innovation because that's what gets them out of the industry. Like people who've been in any industry for a long time. Yeah. Innovation is scary. And if it doesn't make sense to them immediately, of course they're going to write it off because, it is just a threat to the status quo, the way that things have always been, or the way that things are, the way that they know that they are. Yeah. And as soon as those things change, then they either have to adapt or they're gone.
And he's since, I would say, reversed his opinion.
Yeah.
After seeing Coca-Cola buy 25% of our company. And other pretty big wins along the way. But, going back to that time with the Irish company, I didn't have the capital to build my own technology. I didn't have the knowledge to write the code. And I just had this excitement, and I knew I could sell something that I believed in. And not to bring it back to the Cutco world that I started in, but my wife used to call it Cultco, because he had this
Cultco. That's funny.
But
that's how it goes, though.
Yeah, I mean, and I still to this day, I'm a firm believer that it's the best cutlery in the world. Yeah. Great company, great product. But I had that same belief in this problem I was solving. I just didn't know how I was going to solve it. And until I could figure it out, which, from 2010 to I'd say 15, that was the figuring it out years. I was reselling other companies' technologies. I was, making lots of business mistakes.
Were you making money from this during that time, or you were also working somewhere else? Like, how did you pay the bills?
So from 2010 to 2012, I was an employee, but that had some equity in the Irish company. So they started a U.S. company called Elixon USA, and I became the director of operations, salesperson, website developer,
everything for the U.S.
person. Yeah. What they started doing, and I found all this crazy information out as I'm going through it, is so they said, hey, we're going to invest $200,000 to help this U.S. company get up and going. We see a lot of potential there. You're the guy. Let's do it. And in December of 2009, I'd never been to Ireland before, so they flew me to Ireland. So, Irish are very charming, and I love the Irish culture in many ways.
It's a blast over there.
Oh, the hospitality that you get in Ireland is amazing. And everyone is the best salesperson you'll ever meet, just with the accent. But, I'm excited. I was already sold before I got off the plane. And I get picked up by one of their directors, and we go on a ride. We go all over Ireland looking at the different locations of that had the self-pour tables. Yeah. And the business agreement was they were going to transfer money to the U.S. I agreed to a salary. I agreed to commission. I agreed to equity in the company, which was actually no, they did not give me equity. They gave me the worst deal. They gave me 5% of profit. Okay.
So that was my profit share essentially.
Yeah, but I mean, for me to make any money, like we had to, we were going to lose money for the first 2 years. So it was a terrible deal, but I was just so anxious to get started. Yeah. But yeah, so that was how things started. And then they started, instead of giving us $200,000 of startup capital, they sent over $200,000 of equipment. What I came to find out later is they didn't actually own the equipment. They were shipping it to me with the hopes that I would pay them money for it at some point for them to pay the person before they could see that they had shipped them to me.
Gosh.
It was, I can't make it up. It was absolute train wreck.
A shit show. Yeah.
But we grew that business to 200 grand the first year in 2010, 800 grand the second year.
And this was just the tables.
Just tables. Okay. Yeah. And then by 2012, we were on pace to do 1.7. It was just Declan, myself, and a guy named Thomas, who he's talked about many times in the book. I'll get to him in a little bit later. But yeah, so we built that company, and then they went bankrupt. And then they wanted us to restart a new company and transfer do a bunch of illegal stuff. And I said, nope, we're done. You didn't tell us that you were giving us stolen property. Now you're telling us to take the locations down off the website so you aren't in legal trouble. We do not see things the same way ethically.
Yeah.
So we parted ways, started PourMyBeer, Declan and I. And that was 2013. We really didn't have a strong plan.
Yeah.
We went out and pitched a bunch of banks to get some capital.
Yeah.
So we did land a $50,000 loan from a bank, which it helped, but it didn't.
Sure.
And then I found out that when you sell your house and you have any loans with your business, they collect the money out of your house sale, which my wife was extremely excited to find out.
I'm sure she was stoked for it. Yeah, that's crazy.
So transitioning from the Irish company to PourMyBeer was it was exciting though, because we owned 100% of a company. That, with all the knowledge of how to build a house.
Did you know that you wanted to go tap wall versus tables at that point?
Yeah, we'd seen the success rate with tables was few and far between. So it was a gimmick. It was, hey, we've got this cool little, gimmick that you can kind of pour your own drink at. And some locations did well. I mean, Todd English Pub here in Vegas used to crush it. I mean, they were doing probably 70, 80 grand a month just through our tables.
Interesting.
Which is funny because the guy that was there ended up going to work for HMS Host, for all the airports. Okay. And then they put us in a few airports as a result. But
I'm not even able to picture what you mean by a table. Is that?
Yeah, there's a picture in the book.
Is there? Okay.
But yeah, it's a beer table that has kegs underneath of it. But a lot of them had
and they just have taps on the table, so you could just fill it up.
Yeah, and that whole, most of our projects were what we called long draw systems. So you're running the beer from a keg room to the table.
Okay.
I'm having trouble finding
That's a long keg line.
But I learned a lot about the draft industry as a whole. I mean, in college, for those of you that have consumed alcoholic beverages, all we had was a little pump. You had the pump, and you had to, it came out with air like CO2. With traditional, when you go to taps and barrels, that's a direct draw system, meaning that the kegs are literally right behind the wall, and then they're pushing the beer right from there. So it's as fresh as it gets. Yeah. The link that was a 120-foot run from the cooler to the wall. So they have to refrigerate the lines the whole way there to make sure that the beer doesn't come out, at 60 degrees or 70 degrees. Right. And it's chilled all the way to the actual faucet, and they use something called glycol, which is like antifreeze. So they're just constantly circulating this antifreeze
through the hose,
like
the exterior of the hose.
Yeah. So it's if you saw a subsection of a hose, let's say you had 10 lines in there, you might have 4 glycol lines. So one's going out, one's coming back, and it's constantly cooling it the entire time, and it's all insulated. Okay. So, it's a complicated process to get beer to pour well. And in fact, I had foam nightmares in my early days because our system's not going to work well if there's foam.
Sure. Yeah. Well, that there was. Correct me if I'm wrong, but some of your first Tapall locations had to have been SoCal, no?
Yeah. So Barrel Republic was our first fully self-service,
and that's San Diego.
Beach. Yeah, Pacific
Beach. Okay. Because I was telling a buddy of mine about this place that opened up right here. He's like, oh yeah, he lives in I think Ocean Beach, and he was like, yeah, there's this place around the corner that has that. But they went. This was early on when they went, and that was his complaint. He was like, I poured it, and it was half foam, but I still had to pay for the whole thing. Right. And I was like, I've never experienced that problem at this one. It just pours better. I don't know what to tell you, but it was probably just you guys trying to figure out
there's user errors as well.
The method.
Sure. We're trying to engineer around that. We've got some patent pending things that are going to, I would say, make it impossible for someone to mess it up. Okay. But for traditional beer drinkers, pours, you have to open the tap the whole way really quickly for it to come out, smooth. If you barely open the tap, it's going to shoot a little foam out. Gotcha. And foam creates more foam. And kind of a fun fact around like liquid versus foam, a full glass of foam is actually only about 2 to 3 ounces of liquid. So you might pour an entire glass of foam, but you're only getting charged for around 3 ounces of
interesting.
liquid.
Okay. So it doesn't even really affect the cost that much.
It does.
It's just annoying to
it's
drink.
Annoying. Yeah, it's a bad experience. And
right.
I mean, that's one of the great things about wine and cocktails on tap is they pour perfectly 100% of the time.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, I feel like the first question you'd asked was about the experience, and I didn't hit that, cleanly right out the gate. I went down a long rabbit hole, but the general idea, like not to scoot past all that exciting stuff right there, but today you can go into taps and barrels, and you open a tab, you get your card, and it's all connected to the point of sales, and it's just a fluid experience. And going back to that first time at the before the Orioles game, it was not just a 20-minute wait; it was 7 steps that had to take place for me to just get a drink. So. Right. You have to get seated. You have to place your order. They put the order in the point of sales. The point of sales prints the ticket out behind the bar. The bartender gets the ticket, pours the beer, puts the ticket on the rail. The server has to get the drink, take it to
Then you have to close out your tab, which sometimes takes longer than getting seated.
Exactly.
You're just trying to get to where you're going. You're like, I would like to pay for this. Can somebody please take my money? Like, yeah.
It's crazy. And I mean, I anywhere there's a line, there's an opportunity for us. And, whether it's a live event, whether it's, a hotel, whatever, even non-alcoholic. So, that's been, I would say, our North Star is like, how can we make this process more enjoyable?
What made you go what would you even call it? Because you're not a franchise. I was telling something about this the other day, and I didn't know exactly how to say it. It was like, it's almost like a tech hardware company, essentially, like more of like a construction company with point of sale rather than like a franchise model or whatever. What made you go that route versus like, let's just start whatever, PourMyBeer, and then you can buy a PourMyBeer franchise? And
it's a good point. Like we've always kind of considered ourselves very different than any other company out there because our customers build an entire business around our concept.
Right.
So,
but it's still their concept.
It's their concept. Like Taps and Barrels, Ming, that he came up with that idea. He decorated it. He did everything. He just came to us and said, "Hey, I want a 32 tap system." He had seen it in San Francisco, and that's a key part of their business model is. Yeah. And what I did not, again, I started this to solve a problem that I had, but what I didn't realize, because again, I'd worked in restaurants. My first job was at Bottoms Up Pizza in Richmond, Virginia.
Okay.
And so I'd seen the restaurant industry from that perspective, but I'd never really run a restaurant or tap room or bar.
Yeah.
But it's accepted that in all of those industries or all the hospitality industries, it's about a 30% labor cost. So if you're running a business that's doing $1 million, you've accepted the fact that 300,000 of that $1 million is going directly towards your labor. 20%, 20 to 25% towards your booze. For food, it's going to be around 30%. So these are all accepted numbers in the industry. What happened with self-pour is the ones running it efficiently were down to 9 and 11% of their revenue was
labor.
Their labor.
Yeah.
That's a game changer.
That's wild. I mean, it basically doubles your EBITDA, right? For a lot of people.
Yep.
Yeah. To go from whatever, 18 to 23% or whatever, to go all the way up to 30 to 35%. It's a wild difference.
But it's a pretty big shift.
Sure.
It's like saying, hey, I want to redo my HVAC system at my house, and not just the engine, like everything.
Yeah.
So that's why it's been a lot easier for us to go into new construction projects because they see our systems working, and we're part of the process. So we're doing a massive food hall in Midtown right now, and I was on a call with all their designers yesterday, and I mean that project's not even going to take hold till June of next year. So it's being planned into these bigger projects further down the road.
Yeah. Right. Well, I mean, you gotta go spend a bunch of money to put one of these in a system, like an already existing restaurant, right. I would assume.
And we've got case studies like this one random, I have an affinity for Virginia because that's where I'm from. But this place, Fatty's, which I'm like, It's kind of a funny name to call a place Fatty's. I feel kind of like I'm getting bullied as I walk in the door. But it's called Fatty's. It was Fatty's Crab House, and the owner, Chris, kind of came in when I was the only salesperson. I was the salesperson, the finance person, the installer.
Yep.
And he was like, I want to do this in Stafford, and we have a crab shack, but we want to totally revamp it and reopen it as Fatty's Tap House. And I was like, okay, let's do it. So that was like the first case study where we could say, let us look at your financials before, and let's look at them after. And we've got it posted on our website. It's an amazing case study. So the numbers are there. Like, he made his money back within 2 months of the entire investment, not just our technology, but the draft system, the renovations. Just because it was something new, they still kept their food menu pretty similar. Yeah. But now they were a craft beer tap house with self pour. And his labor went down. So it was. I do believe more and more operators are going to kind of lift their head to that, and especially with hospitality being where it is currently, I think it's their survival of the fittest. The ones that are the most entrepreneurial and willing to kind of, I would say, invest in the future. Yeah. But most of our projects to date have been new construction. Most people would look at this primarily for the beer, but I know you mentioned it already, but you guys also have seltzers, wine, cocktails. You can do this with coffee. Yeah, so soda too. No, like what type of beverages would you say it's good? But we're liquid agnostic. We treat all liquids equally. All liquids are created equal at PourMyBeer. Yeah, and we did not change our name, but we added PourMyBev to the family of names. Yeah, to recognize that we don't want to be pigeonholed as just beer. We cut our teeth with beer. That's why I started the company. But by all means, it's an all beverage company. And I'm not sure how your wife is when you go out, but I know 100% of the time my wife, if there's a mojito on the menu, she's going to order it because that's her go-to. But when we go to like Tapster or other locations that are offering cocktails, actually locally the Resorts World. I don't know if you've ever been in the main area there. They've got like 38 taps kind of surrounding the middle area. Is that new? That was there when they first opened in 2022, I think. It's like just a part of Resorts World, or it's in one of the restaurants? Yeah, so it's that they have that like food truck area or food hall area. The food court, yeah. So it's right in the dead center of the food court. It's a big circular kind of tap system, and they've got the bar in the center. That's your guys's. That's us, yeah. But they've got like 10 cocktails on tap. Okay. And so I said, my wife, she'll get a mojito when we go to a traditional bar tap room. But with self-pour, she'll actually sample a few of the other ones because it tells you what's in it. You can hit the button and you can see a little bit more about like what the what the flavors are, hibiscus or whatever. Like, so it just encourages you to not to be more adventurous. Sure. To not stick to the same thing you drink every time. Yeah, and if you can just get an ounce of it to see if you like it, it's a little bit better of a tasting system. Yeah, and it's good for the owner too because they're not just giving away product. I mean that in itself. I mean. I feel like there's so many like selling points to it, but like samples that's a massive loss. It's a loss leader. Yeah. You're hoping that they're going to buy stuff. Yeah. And it's annoying. It's like, I hate to ask someone at the ice cream shop to try more than 2 or 3 things. Oh, totally. But especially when you're sitting at a restaurant, like what you're talking about already, where the service has not been great, or maybe they're understaffed, even if it's not their fault, it's well run, but they're just understaffed. Maybe there's a surplus of people in there for whatever reason. But then it's like, oh man, I've heard good things about this beer, but I don't want to just order a pint. And then it's like, they offer to get me a sample. Half the time I just tell them, just bring me the whole thing. I'll just drink it. Cause I don't want to sit here and wait for another 9 minutes for you to go get me like a half a swig. It's going to be warm by the time it gets here. Yeah. And then I'm going to drink it. And then I'm going to order it after that. And it's going to be another 10 minutes before I actually get it. Just grab me the beer. No, we're cut from the same cloth. I think, I'm the same way. But that's the beauty of it is like you really can sample it. Yeah. And what's cool from a data perspective is we can see, when someone goes back and has more of it, we can determine that as a like. So now across 13,000 they pour taps, 1 ounce, and then they pour 9 ounces or whatever the next one. Exactly. And we can package that and, sell it back to the brands if they want to see that as well. So it's, that it's funny because again, to start the business, I was solving like what I thought was a problem for me. Yeah. Then it ends up being I'm solving a problem for the operators. For the owners, yeah. And now, for the brands, we could potentially solve some of their problems with it, where they don't know if something's going to be well liked or not. Yeah, right.
How much influence do you have over all of the operators that work within your network in terms of like what products they're buying or using at their spot?
So, again, I learned a ton going down this path. I actually became almost a paralegal to learn how the legalities work of every single state's liquor boards. But when it came to like what's on tap, my ignorance when I landed my first lease was that this place, Mother's, the same place I couldn't get a drink, they ended up leasing a beer table from me back in 2009, before I started with the Irish company. And I said, hey, I love Trogues beer. It's a Pennsylvania craft brewer. My buddy works for the company. I was like, could you put Trogues on the table? He was like, no, we're going to put Miller Lite and Blue Moon. And I was like, really? Like, why? Nothing against Miller Lite or Blue Moon. He was like, because they're paying me to put their products on tap. I was like, okay, yeah,
fair enough.
That makes sense.
Like that checks out.
But I think they were like buying a $500 hamburger every Wednesday. That was kind of their that was their way of doing it. But either way, it was like we do try to share like best practices across our platform. We have a closed Facebook group with our customers, and we send newsletters out and we say, hey, look, we have some customers of ours doing 600, 700,000 a month just through our system in a location. So, and that specific one does about 50 to 60 grand a month just in margaritas out of one tap.
Oh my goodness.
So it's,
like one flavor of margarita.
Yeah, they have one flavor, and then they have a spicy margarita. They've, that's
crazy.
They take it a step further and they put salt on the glasses right next to it. So it's like, it's kind of telling you, hey, come here, get your salted glass or your sugar glass, pour your margarita, have a good time.
Yeah, right.
So we try to share that, but it's, we found that having a mixture, it's not quantity necessarily. Like we've got locations that have 100 taps that don't even do half of what some locations we have that have 20 and 30 taps.
Interesting.
So the number of taps and decisions does not determine, that you're going to have more taps, more revenue.
Yeah. Have you found it's more of a location thing? It's more like what percentage of these concepts are also offering food? Does food have something to do with it?
Yeah, they're all a little different. We've got two brands that are growing pretty aggressively right now. They're actually franchising their concept that's using our technology.
I've seen one of these. What are the names?
So one's Hoppin'.
Okay.
And the other one's Tapster.
I think Hoppin' was the one that I saw. I got an ad recently for somebody that was doing this.
It's probably Hoppin'.
Before we met, and I was like, oh, that's like that same concept that I saw at that other place, but they're just franchising their model. Is this the one that's like, it's the wall, but then they also have like games and random stuff like that?
Yeah, that's Hoppin', yeah. Okay. They've done, I'm envious of how they're marketing, themselves too, because they're basically pinpointing markets they want to be in, and they're saying we need strong operators in this market. Yeah. And then they're getting a decent amount of strong operators, applying to get the franchise. But between those two, and then we have two other. Crave is another concept. It's more food focused, so it's more food forward versus the beer. But they've got self pour. We've got about 150 of those in development, meaning like they're committed or they're franchising that concept just all over the country. Wow. So it's it's a small footprint, or it can be a small footprint, and those don't offer food. The first two, Taps or Hoppin'. So, you're. Oh,
really? Neither of them do.
Yeah. They'll have like a neighboring food truck come in or something like that, but it keeps it simple. So they can run their business with, good margins and not many people.
And no perishables.
I mean, it's to not have to worry about theft. Yeah. Like that's such a, sadly, that's a big area that a lot of hospitality industries and every industry has to deal with. But and it's not theft from the customers. It's it's theft from the employees. So the fact that nothing can be dispensed without it being connected to a payment or a access card. Yeah,
you got to be pretty bold to walk out of there with a full keg.
Yeah, it may have happened. I don't know.
Sure.
But so it's exciting to see other operators take an idea that I had and run with it.
Right.
But we don't really intend to franchise it ourselves as far as like our own brand. Especially as we're really leaning into the non-alc space as well with, sodas and kombucha. We're doing some stuff with Health Aid now where they're letting guests sample. Like if you go to Whole Foods and you want to sample, a kombucha that you have no idea what it tastes like, but if you want to buy it, it's like $15.
Oh, interesting.
So you can sample it for 50 cents.
Got it.
Then, we're already starting to see that that's translating to more sales because if you can sample it, you like it, guess what? You're probably going to buy.
Yeah. I mean, Costco's proven that for a really long time.
Yeah. It's just been tough with liquid because what are you going to do? Stand out there and have a person pour them into those little mini shot glasses? Like I don't know. That's a lot of effort.
Right.
When we can automate that.
We have to worry about, is it even a good experience for them at that point? Like you have to have a mini refrigerator out there to make sure that it stays cold when you're doing it.
Like you're putting them in those little plastic, kid medicine things.
Right.
They're getting warm pretty quickly. And, warm kombucha probably doesn't taste nearly as good as cold kombucha.
Yeah.
Or cold brew coffee. You don't want, lukewarm brew coffee.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Do you have a lot of people doing coffee?
Yeah, most of our locations offer at least 1 or 2 taps with Nitro coffee. So I don't know if you've ever had the nitrogenated coffee, but it's it comes out.
I like Starbucks Nitro cold brew. Yeah,
it comes out looking like a Guinness.
Yeah, it's real smooth,
and it's smooth. It's sweet without any sweetener. Like I'm a big fan for that.
Yeah. So some of the taps are Nitro.
Yeah. So typically a Guinness is going to be a nitrogenated beer.
Yeah.
And so the cool
well, they don't make you do it, right? But they highly recommend, like when you buy beer from Guinness as a distributor, like they're going to be like, hey, you need Nitro.
Yeah. And the guy, AC Beverage that I mentioned in here, that was kind of like my beer mensch, he taught me about everything in the draft world. He invented the first nitrogenator, which basically takes nitrogen out of the air and stores it and then allows you to re-inject it into the beer. And he also invented that whole Starbucks, it's called Joe Tap. So he's the one that presented that to Starbucks as like, hey, you should be offering Nitro coffee.
Interesting.
So it's been kind of cool to see. He's just a beer scientist, I guess I would say.
Kidding. Yeah.
And just really well-positioned product. It just makes it taste different and better. But yeah, every Guinness you ever drink has to have nitrogenated lines going to it. Yeah. Typically, it's a 75% blend, so it's 75% nitrogen, 25% CO2.
Okay.
And that combo allows it to create those bubbles that we see.
That's why I don't buy Guinness in the bottles. I have to buy it from the cans. Because the cans, they put that little nitrogen ball in there. Yeah. From what I understand, it's literally like full of nitrogen. And then once you break the seal, because of the oxygen entering the broken seal or something, it pushes the nitrogen through the liquid or something like that. I was just like, this is crazy.
It tastes similar to coming out of the tap. So whatever they're doing,
a noticeable difference between drinking the can versus drinking a bottle.
Yeah,
because I'll every time I get a Guinness outside of a tap, I'll still pour it in a glass.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So, but if you pour the bottle in the glass versus pouring the can, there's definitely a difference.
Yeah, no, and I just got back from Ireland. I was had a layover there. We had some meetings in Austria. Okay. I kind of skipped over the fact that I wouldn't be here without my Austrian business partners.
Yeah.
Because when I was transitioning away from all those reselling of other companies, I'd gone to my a company that was kind of reselling through the Irish company.
Okay.
So it was their technology. The Irish company was pretending like it was theirs, but I knew it wasn't. And then when I reached out to Herman, who's based in Hollebrunn, I was like, hey, I'm parting ways with Elixon. Is there any way we can have a direct relationship? And he said, well, I signed a contract with Elixon that is, it's going to be for another year. So I can't really do anything with you with the table tap, stuff. But if there's something else you'd like to explore, then, we can talk. So we still worked together over 2013. And then 2014 was, I would call it my Britney Spears meltdown era. That's where I shaved my head and contemplated going into professional fighting to make some money because it was... times were tough.
Yeah. Right.
But that was, you go into business with people, you always have positive intentions. At least I do. And my business partner at that stage was Declan, and Declan and I we were like literally month to month figuring out how we were going to stay alive or keep the business alive. Like both of us were healthy from a physical perspective, but it was
not so much mentally,
mentally,
or emotionally.
Because you go from being a high performer in sales and getting the rewards of being a high performer to just getting your ego crushed.
Yeah. Right.
And it's, There's some trauma that I think still lingers from going through that level of disappointment.
Yeah.
And we got to this stage in 2014 where I was like, dude, we don't have any money in our account and we owe this vendor $80,000. We can't pay each other. Like that just can't happen.
Yeah.
And he was like, well, I got to go, I got an offer for a pretty good job. I was like, take it.
Yeah.
Like it's, it's, if it's, we
don't have an option. You can't just not eat food.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, right.
So he did. And we had an agreement in place that basically said like, if he did leave, but he came back within a year, we could renegotiate kind of like the structure.
Sure.
But he left and he crushed it. He worked with, ironically, a cold brew coffee company, High Brew. So he helped grow their distribution and their product's great. They're still out there. If you're ever in Texas, you see it everywhere in Texas. But
I've seen it. They're
in Whole Foods too. And then he went from there to C4 and grew that brand. So we actually do this 150-mile bike ride together every year for the MS 150. So we've stayed, really good friends through that, which I think is a testament to kind of just the character.
Sure.
A person is, when things go wrong.
It's also like a recognition that just because something goes wrong doesn't mean that you have to not be friends anymore.
Right.
Like there is a version of amicably going into different directions and still being not only cool with each other, but still like friends through the entire process.
And he's still got a few shares of the company. So I think he's obviously, he's excited to see it
vested
continue to
interest.
grow.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
But yeah, that was a tough time, man. Like
what brought you out of that?
I think the most important decision you can make in your life is who you marry. And at that stage, my wife got to see me at my worst. I shaved my head, not that I have a terrible looking head when it's shaved, but I shaved my head and I just started kind of negative talk. I was like, I'm a loser. Like all my friends are doing so. I should have never left corporate America. Like, and I was just super negative on myself. And my wife, in a pretty calm way, and she, just to give you a little background, she played college basketball, Hall of Fame, holds a school record in steals and there in points. So she's a competitor. And she said very calmly, she said, it's really unattractive to see you talk about yourself this way because I know it's not true.
Yeah.
And that was the medicine I needed. I went on a long run after that. We lived near like a nature trail. So I went on a long run and came back and just really like detailed out like how much debt did I have, which deals could I possibly close in the next few, weeks or whatever and it all worked out, without I guess glossing over it. Like I had a few deals hit around, the same time, and our average deal is about $30,000. So, when I typically
$30,000 in money to you,
$30,000 in money to us. So, a project might, if it's $30,000 back then, we would get about 15 to 20 of it up front.
Okay.
So that it gave me the ability to start paying down some of the debt.
Yeah. A new, some oxygen.
Yeah. I mean, which if you don't have oxygen, like you're done.
Right.
So
you can't last very long without it.
No, it's it was so that was 2014, but that's also when I went to Austria, and I did the old Cutco thing. Is, hey, Mrs. Jones, I'm going to be in your neighborhood.
Sure.
Can I just swing by and do a quick presentation? And knowing a little bit about your background, there's that element of cold calling. It translates to everything.
Right.
So I called Herman up and I said, hey, I'm going to be in your neighborhood. I'm going to be in Austria. Yeah. I'd love to meet you and just talk about an idea I have. And so I did. I flew to Austria. I had another meeting. That was not my primary meeting, but I did get to meet with Herman and his company Rettel had been doing dispense technology for like 20 years.
Okay.
So they have a very unique understanding of how things should work to work 100% of the time.
Yeah.
And dealing with the other companies prior to that, I just knew that it had to be simple. And my North Star was that at the time my son was 6, I said, my 6-year-old son has to be able to install and support this technology. If he can't, then we failed.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that was, there was a longer, like 30-page white paper document, but that was the goal of it. And so in March so then he said, okay, well, I need $100,000, which I'm like, you might as well said $1 million. I don't have $100,000. So what I did is I ended up taking out one of those like payday loans.
Okay.
Not like the super aggressive ones, but like I could pay it back over like 3 or 4 months. So it gave me a little bit of time. So I took out one for like 60, 70 grand for that. I think I borrowed 60 to pay back 70 in like a 3-month period, which I did, to get things started. And it was a unique structure where I was giving him money, but it was going towards the product. So he was, they were able to repurpose a lot of their existing components to create the system for us. So it wasn't like they had to undertake a ton of...
so they built it from scratch.
Yeah, they built it from scratch. And and then in March of 2015, I flew over to Austria and I got to see the first prototype, which is scary as shit because I'm selling this. Like, I'm actively selling it before I've even seen the prototype. And I'm like, I've got 150,000 in deposits. I got to see something that works here or I'm really effed, you know? So I get there in Austria and he's like, he's very calmly, like, he's an engineer. Like, so he lays everything out. He's like, here's the meter, here's the valve, here's the RFID. And when I saw it all work, I'm like, it's going to work out. Like, I don't have to go out of business. Like, it's actually going to work out. And I had so much. I called my wife. I called, anyone I could call. I was like, this is it. This is the kind of the real kickoff point. Like, this is the real starting line. The previous 4 years or 5 years, no. Yeah. This is the starting line. And I just had so much enthusiasm.
Up to this point, you were still doing tables?
We had... For 2013 and 14, we worked with a company out of California. We were kind of a reseller for their walls. Okay. So the one that we did in Barrow Republic, it wasn't our tech. We resold another company's tech.
Gotcha. Okay.
And there was some misalignment, with our leadership and theirs. Like, there was like one instance that I would say just personifies the whole relationship. We did a project for a place called Kings Lane Bowling. And they had their grand opening scheduled for like a Wednesday. And on Monday night, one of the lines that was with our system broke and leaked an entire keg over their floor. And the guy calls me up because I have a good relationship with him. He's like, hey, dude, like, it's going to cost us $1,800 to fix this floor because the keg, and he sent a picture of the valve that was cracked. And I was like, yeah, we'll just take it off your bill if that's cool. And so I called the company in California and I said, hey, look, the valve cracked. The right thing to do is to cover the 1,800. Like, I think we should just split this between the two of our companies. And they were like, absolutely not.
Yeah, of course. Use your error.
They were like, if it was a $20,000 Persian rug, we wouldn't split it with you. So why would we split this? And I'm like, and the guy was a lawyer, so he was
saying lawyer stuff. Yeah.
Saying lawyer stuff. And I said, dude, if this is the position you want to take, like, this solidifies my belief that we shouldn't work together. Aligned. Yeah. And so that was the end of that. And then they threatened to sue me and, but in between all that was where I was dealing with the Austrians and getting things off the ground with them. But it closed that chapter pretty cleanly.
And gave you proprietary technology that
we
you
had
actually
our own technology now. Yeah. So that was, it was the first year, it was me going up against, we had sold their first 30 systems, the company that was in California. What I can say without sounding like I'm gloating is, like, they went from like threatening to like put me out of business and blah, 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 to now we've got like 600 locations. We've converted about 50 of their customers to ours. Like, they've had 5 different CEOs in the last 6 years. It's a shit show. Right. They're still hanging on, I guess to some degree. They've got a few happy customers, but like, I do get joy out of knowing that, like, the long game won, Right.
If you're not in the long game, you're in the wrong game. Yeah. They figured that out.
Yeah. And they've got a lot of issues, but like, I don't lose sleep over them anymore. Yeah. It's like they're pretty far in the rear view.
Sure. Sure. So you start going out with actually your technology. How long after this whole like debacle, I think we might file bankruptcy, or we're at least going to run out of money, or something's going to, like, I can't pay bills. How long after this are you like back on the optimism train? Like, this is going to go really well.
Yeah. So in 2015, when we started installing our tech, I was genuinely excited, it was excited from March on, I think April, May was our first installation of 2015. Okay. And it was just me and this guy, Thomas. So Thomas was like, he's that friend that if you call him at 3 a.m. in the morning, he will pick up on the first ring, like 100% of the time. And there's that, a lot of entrepreneurs talk about how important those first few hires are. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to give myself too much credit for making the decision to hire him. Yeah. But, being an underdog myself in a lot of ways, I guess it could be argued how much of an underdog, but like, I was an undersized linebacker. I was, a lot of things, I guess, to create a little chip. I was picked on in middle school. So, there's that underdog mentality. Yep. And Thomas, what I liked about his resume is he won the scholarship for what is it called? Basically he had a tough upbringing. So it was a hardship scholarship. So he had a full academic scholarship to University of Maryland for going through a pretty crappy childhood. And I liked that. I was like, and he worked in the cafeteria while he was in college. And like on his resume, it said he was a sandwich engineer, which I thought was pretty interesting. But when he came for his interview, he I was asking him about like how he takes apart computers, and he actually fixed something randomly on the interview that it didn't even ask him to fix. He was like, would you mind if I fix that? And I was like, yeah, go for it. So just one of those super intelligent dudes. Yeah. And I wanted to build that up because in 2015, he had already left the business.
Okay.
I went back to him and was like, Thomas, this Rettel, I've got to deal with them. Because he always liked Rettel, Herman Rettel, their company, because their systems always worked. Mm-hmm. I said, I'm going to be launching my own product. I need a right-hand person to manage projects, do installations, be support. Yeah. And he was like, all right, I'm in. He was like, if it's with Rettel, I'm in. So he came back after working with me from 2010, 11, and 12, and 13, and then left in 2014, and then came back in 2015. And right around this time, I couldn't pay him like a full salary. I was paying him for installations and paying him so he was picking up some side income.
Yeah.
So randomly, we had 2 projects hitting the same week, one in Seattle, one in Boston, like total opposite sides of the country.
Yeah.
The owners both called me like, Thomas is not picking up. Like, is he okay? And I'm like, he's not picking up? Like, that dude picks up every single time. Like, I was like, we haven't heard from him. We need these systems installed like next week. So then I get a call from Thomas's girlfriend, and she's like, Josh, Thomas is in jail. Now, this is like the most straight-edged kid you've ever met. And there's a picture of him in the book, like glasses, he's just you would never suspect. Yeah. He's in jail for what, Right. Didn't drink all through college,
Yeah.
Well, apparently, he got pulled over in Missouri with 150 pounds of weed in his car. And they put him in jail instantly.
Oh my goodness.
And, another fun fact about Thomas is in 2012, he was telling me about this like online like currency that he was mining, and he was like, man. I think it's going to be worth something someday. This dude amassed a few hundred Bitcoin in 2012.
Oh my god!
So needless to say, he got some good legal help. Sadly, if you do the math of what the legal help cost in 2015 versus what the Bitcoin would be worth in 2024 is probably a big, but he still managed to keep a decent amount of them. But he got out of it. He had to, I think he did like 6 months in jail. But that left me back to a company.
He was dealing or distributing or something?
He was just transporting. I think he picked it up in California. He never disclosed to me. This is all just based off of the news article that came out about him. And I read that, and basically it was double packed or whatever, and the cops actually didn't have the right to pull him over. They just saw California plates driving through Missouri. Were like, oh, that looks, suspicious. But either way, it all worked out. Like the reason I was kind of telling that story was because then I had to go do an install in Seattle, and then fly to Boston. And I had 2 young kids at home, a 6 and a 4-year-old, and I'm like, Jeanette, I gotta leave for like a week and a half, or we're gonna have some bad things happen.
Right.
But those are the types of things, like, you can't prepare for that. It's like,
and you can't call in sick.
Nah.
You know what I mean? Like, that's the thing when you're the entrepreneur, is like,
when you also like
stops with you.
I have a sense of, my word. My word is my bond. If I say I'm going to do something, like if it requires me flying around the world to do it, and it's not their fault, but I have to do it,
Right.
And that's something.
Well, that's the whole thing about being in the long game. So if you're in a short game, then you don't really care.
Yep.
But if you're going to be around this world for a while, then you can't just run around burning bridges all the time. Like, you have to actually build a strong reputation.
The people that still burn bridges, and then they still, like, the people
act
that are
like they didn't just do that.
Well, they act like they didn't do it, but then the other people they start to go into business with do no due diligence.
Right. That they can just keep moving from person to person. Yeah.
I mean, I see it with our competitors. Like they'll literally leave a customer hanging, and then they'll be talking to a new prospect of how great they are. And I'm like, I just talked to this person. Don't you think you should call them and like ask them what it's like to do business with this company when things don't go right?
Right.
Because our whole MO is, we may not get things right 100% of the time, but we make things right 100% of the time. And if you're okay with someone who's making it right 30% of the time, then that's your decision as a business owner to take that risk. But
sure.
I can't wrap my head around why someone would ever do that.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
But
makes a lot of sense, dude. I mean, congrats on all the success now. I mean, now you got meetings on meetings. You're expanding into a bunch of different places. You got hundreds of people that are trying to put this into their concepts that they're building. What's next steps for you? What are the goals for the business?
Growth is, I would say, a more generic answer to that, but I still don't believe we've crossed that chasm or that threshold of early adopter to
early
enterprise,
majority.
or early majority, and that's where I'm trying to focus my energy. Is what do we need to do as a company to make that transition? So it's working
there's
with
so much more meat on the bone.
So much. I mean, it's like it's funny. A friend of mine, he's actually an advisor with our company. He's with Workday. I don't know. They're like I think $150 billion SaaS company.
Yep.
And he was like, he used to work for NASA when we lived in Maryland together. So his townhome backed up to ours. We were really good friends. Our dogs played together. We shared a lot of beers. And I was talking with him recently, and he's the CTO for that company now. So he's done some pretty cool stuff in his life. And he's like, I don't want you to take this the wrong way. He was like, but 600 locations is kind of like a proof of concept.
Yeah.
He said, so, to get to that next level, your systems have to go to the cloud. They have to meet all the security requirements for enterprise accounts to deploy them. If we want to do stuff with Starbucks, which if anyone on this that listens to this podcast has contacts at Starbucks, reach out to Travis and we'll take care of you.
Yeah.
But
take care of you really well, by the way.
You go to very well. You go to an airport and you see lines upon lines of people trying to get Starbucks. And we've got the answer to that problem. It's getting that answer in front of the right person at Starbucks to say, sales would jump by 30% if we just had a designated fast pass. You want hot coffee or you want cold coffee?
I have been saying this for so long. Literally, so I have this like tab in my phone called business ideas. I just have like a list of like just random, like kind of like you. I come across a problem that I think could be solved. I'm like, let me throw that in the list. Who knows what will be someday? I might never do anything with any of them, but one of them in there is a concept that I wanted to call just black coffee. So I'm a black coffee drinker, and standing in line in Starbucks behind 32 people that are ordering the white chocolate mocha frappuccino with an extra pump of caramel, but and plus this, and let's add that, subtract this. And the receipt is like, a foot long for one drink type of a thing. It's just like, I just want a black coffee.
Yeah.
Like I don't want to stand behind this person who takes 7 minutes to order their drink and then the barista has to work on it for 12 minutes. Yeah, right. Exactly. It's just like, I'm just here for a black coffee. I've always thought like, I'll just start just black coffee. It would just be like self-pour coffee. You can just walk in, you can bring your own freaking mug. I don't care. Bring your own mug, walk in, pour your coffee, bounce. Like for busy people who drink real coffee. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But the problem is with that business model is that the money is in the upsells and all the food items and the other things that are there.
It does make you wonder though, like
coffee.
How many people pass a line or, whether it's in an airport or anywhere and they're like, I want a coffee, but not that bad.
Right. Or like, I would love a coffee, but I literally can't wait in this line because my flight is boarding.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's what it is for me half the time. It's just like, oh my gosh, there's 18 people in this line. There's no way that I'm going to get to the front before I have to be on my flight. So
and I'm a patient person. I hate inefficiencies.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Like,
and that seems like a glaring one to me.
Well,
but just like what you're saying,
it.
it probably wouldn't make sense for me to do it as like a concept by itself for just black coffee. But for companies like this, Starbucks or Pete's Coffee or any of the ones that are like growing in multiple locations right now, like that, like I heartily second that idea and would be one of the people using that line fairly frequently. So
well, the key is
Starbucks.
It's like, yeah,
Get it
Starbucks,
together.
get it together.
Yeah. Did you put the Nitro coffee on that one too?
Oh, dude, it's like, it's a no-brainer. Like, I would use that 100% of the time that I'm going through airport. I would say I only get coffee at an airport maybe 10% of the time because I just hate lines.
Well, what I always thought was like, this is just my brain working in that sense, was just like, if it's in an airport, you wouldn't even need the full Starbucks location with employees in the airport. You could just have a station, just like a single employee making sure nothing crazy is going on, somebody to, move the line along, whatever. But just like a station with, it just says Starbucks and it has like 6 or 7 taps and you can just come by, pour it, swipe your card, and then leave. And you could have 7 of those in one airport in 2 actual Starbucks locations for all the Frappuccino drinkers or people who want the burrito or whatever with their order. But like for a lot of other people, that would be totally fine. Just an express coffee self-pour machine in an airport.
And we've already got that. Like we've got essentially it's a hot dispenser because you can't, it's a little more complicated than just having like a tap there. So we've got that problem solved. We've got pay pour already launched, meaning like you can use your phone or a credit card, you tap and pour. So it's all of that already exists. It's just getting them to say, we're going to do this.
Right.
So we want to lean into those opportunities, a lot heavier, but that just setting the company up so we can achieve those goals. Like it's like a boat. Like you need a certain type of boat to go from transatlantic versus like just going in
to be able to handle the sheer
exactly
volume of difficulties coming your way.
Yeah,
you got to
even managing.
You have to fortify
15 installs a month right now. Like we have 4 guys literally getting on planes every like 2 or 3 days. So they're Chicago, Arizona, New York. Like these guys they're out there doing installations. Like we need to get the product even more simplified, so it can be self-install. The same way you set up your iPhone, you follow the prompts and it's telling you like, look at here how to set it up. Like we've got to simplify it to that level. Right.
So shoot, lots of exciting stuff on the horizon, man. I appreciate you for coming out, and I'm looking forward to going and hitting the golf course, even though I know it's going to be really, really hot out there. So we'll get out of here, head on to the next thing on the schedule. But before we go, where can people find more about you and what you got going on, Josh?
So the company, PourMyBeer.com, we're pretty active on Instagram. Me personally, Self-Pour Josh. And then Tap the Big Idea. It was an Amazon bestseller in like 4 categories, right out the gate. It launched the same time as Dan Martell's book. It was the same date. Yeah. He was one of my business coaches for a while, so I thought that was pretty interesting. And then tapthebigidea.com. It's on Audible. That's a whole nother story. Like I did the Audible, reading with Scribe. I don't know if you've heard about Scribe, and it was while they were going through some pretty interesting times over there. But for those of you that want to hear my voice for a few hours and not have to read it, like I highly encourage you to share that with someone that's considering the entrepreneurial path. Yeah, sure. Because got to help them out.
Awesome, dude. Thanks so much for taking the time. At Self-Pour Josh over on social. Go connect with him over there. Tell him you heard about him here on the show. And dude, thanks for doing this. I appreciate you.